All right, we are live. All right, everybody. Today I have a little bit of a different live video for you today. So instead of preaching to you about things you might be struggling with or giving you any type of tips, today what I want to do is do a live interview with one of my coaching clients, Juliana. So Juliana has been with us for just over 8 weeks. And I figured it would be a good idea to bring her on and let her talk about her experience. So Juliana, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone who is either watching this live or watches it later. My name is Juliana. I am a working professional like most of you guys, I'm sure. My personal story, I've been in the banking world and now in the general realm of finance and advising. The total of 13 years now I'm going on. In the scope of that 13 years, I got my MBA while working full time. I've gotten a couple certifications in customer process and customer experience. And I was trying to maintain an active life schedule. I grew up playing tennis. I was an avid tennis player. I started taking figure skating lessons somewhere amongst all that. I just loved being active, which is tough to do when you have a full-time job. But my biggest promotion in that time is 2 years ago, I got promoted to full-time mother.
Yeah.
So my whole life has kind of been a whole, I guess you could summarize it as, roll with the punches, I guess, with varying levels of success. But that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you are like the definition of like a busy working mom.
Unfortunately, I guess it's
Yeah.
been tough, and of course, COVID hasn't helped with that, right? In the course of the pandemic, a lot of us, myself included, started working from home, started quarantining, various constraints that you couldn't have planned for, right, at any point in your life, unless you've gone through some sort of extreme health struggle or something of that course. But yeah, definitely very busy. I was in a retail world before I switched into advising, so of course you have to deal with the demand of your live clients and all that. Not too unlike you, right, Corey?
Right. Yeah. Things have changed. So
Absolutely.
let's rewind. So you've been with us for, just over 8 weeks. In those few weeks before you joined, like what was life like? What were the struggles you were going through? And like what was the tipping point that made you decide, okay, I'm gonna stop letting Corey harass me and hop on a call with him?
I don't mind Corey harassing me. For those who don't know, and maybe some of you have similar circumstances, I met Corey when he was still operating his facility. So I think you and I are going on 6 years now or something like
Been a
that, right,
while.
Corey? So I don't want to give the full backstory, but I feel like it's important for where I am today because I've always struggled with weight, and I've heard people say this before. So for me, I can remember specifically it was fourth grade, because in third grade I went from being a normal regular kid at the beginning of the year, and if you look at the pictures of me by the end of the year, I ballooned. And of course you're not aware of it at that age, right?
Yeah.
So fourth grade was when the bullying start. Fifth grade specifically, though, this is when you're like prepubescent, you're starting to recognize, industry standards, which of course you recognize in hindsight, right? So the kids are picking on you. You're not wearing these jeans. You're not wearing these clothes. Fifth grade specifically stands out in my mind. And then through the course of middle school and into high school, that's when I dealt with it by going the not correct through eating disorders of every, if you can picture or name an eating disorder, I probably had it. Um, so my backstory, the relevant parts of this is by the time eighth grade, so I'm 12, almost 13, I didn't even ask how much I weighed. I just saw on the scale that she had slid that thing to like something like 195. It was almost at 200 at 12. And then I just, at that point, that sort of triggered this whole, I got to deal with this kind of thing. Again, not in the right ways. But it kind of set the course of the rest of my life because through my teen years, through my 20s, I don't think I got over the eating disorders till after I met you, Corey. So I was like 25, 26 at the time. Got down as low as 117, but that was through bulimia. I'm not ashamed to say it, but obviously not the right way to cope with it. That's like
Yeah.
a life-threatening thing to deal with, right? This whole notion of being healthy and being, a correct size, or however you want to frame it in your mind. Like, that's something that I've always struggled with. And even now that I don't have the eating disorder, I kind of have the opposite of it, I guess, where we just enjoy eating or indulge in the wrong habits. And of course, now I'm back ballooning back towards that 200 point, right? So this has always been a struggle. I think specifically around the time I met Corey was when I really felt like at ease, right? So I'm doing his physical program. We're doing, I think it was a 6-week program, which is how I met you before.
Yeah.
Um, I felt comfortable, even though in my mind I was still heavy because I was, 150, 160 at the time, which is crazy, right? And we also have to get out of the scope that healthy is around a number, but it starts in here, right? It starts in your head. So I was getting into a healthy routine, finding a healthy way in all senses of the words to balance some sort of activity with some sort of food schedule, with some sort of full-time work program. And then in the midst of this, I mentioned getting my MBA on top of that, right? So,
Yep.
I had a plan. And then in 2018, I found out I was expecting. She was born late in 2018. And then especially for people who have gone through this before, become parents for the first time, you have to relearn life all over again, right? So I cannot say I'm back to that point, but that's sort of what prompted my call to Corey. I had kept in touch with him through Facebook, through his various postings and media and emails. And I think the thing that just prompted me to finally call him was I had several visits with my doctor since I gave birth, and I did choose to nurse my child. She was not concerned with the weight that I put on, despite being the heaviest that I had been since I was a teenager. She said, you do what you need to do for your child because you have the rest of your life to put your life plan back on track. So we did that, but here we are 2 years later, and now we're in a pandemic, and now we're at home, and there's all these other constraints. I think after I had the follow up with my doctor, who was saying, you might want to be careful because depression is an issue, with this pandemic. And that's not something you want to deal with on top of everything else that you're dealing with. I think that's when I finally called Corey and said, I need help.
And that's when we got started. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you're not, you're about 2/3 of the way through the program right now. So
Yeah.
you've got, 4 weeks to go. So quite a bit of time ahead of you for the 12-week program. What are some of the things that you've experienced as far as like your results so far and changes that you've experienced?
I think the obvious thing is the fact right now, I know you guys can't see it, I'm wearing jeans that I haven't worn in a long time. They don't hurt. They're not tight. I'm not muffin topping over them, as horrible as that sounds. But I know people talk about this whole notion of non-scale victories, but I mean, again, I'm going to assume at least one other person has experienced. You go to put on your clothes one day, and the moment you start struggling with them, it is the biggest slap in the face, right? So I think the opposite is true in this, where I've done this a couple weeks now. Not only have I had results, I've had results beyond what I expected to. So I'm not ashamed to say we're down 20 pounds, right? Officially as of this past Monday.
We are, yeah.
I've not been perfect too. I want people to know that I have not followed this plan verbatim. Corey knows it. That's part of the point of the program, right? Is to work through that. But 20 pounds, and I had said to him when I first started that if I could hit 20 to 25, I would be happy. So obviously we're going to kick that to the dust, but the clothes are fitting easier. Impulse eating is a lot easier to control. I think part of what I wanted, not just the accountability of this program, but I wanted to retain some sense of control, especially for those who are working from home. There's a lot of gray area as far as where work ends and life begins. So I was getting into what I like to tell people is the trap, right? The trap of at what point do I break out of this and say, this stops here. There's that cycle aspect. And then there's this is what I can control. This is what I can't. And that's really difficult when you don't have that clear boundary of what's what. And also one thing I did want to mention is I'm at home working from home, as I mentioned, but in my home rather, I don't have an office space. So I had to find a makeshift setup when this all started, which our bedrooms don't have space for a desk. Otherwise I would have set one up there. The only space in our house that has a kitchen that is even close to ergonomically fit is in the kitchen. So what a bad idea that is. But I'm dealing with the constraint of the space. It's like, oh, I can control what I eat from home. This is going to be so good. No, it didn't work, right? So it really had to start with the mindset of, scheduling what you're going to eat, scheduling just like you schedule your day.
Yeah.
Impulse eating is much easier to control. I'm still in my kitchen, but I'm not tempted to raid the fridge at any given moment. I don't panic when I get hungry. I think that was one of my big things is amongst various health issues, which we haven't really gotten into, but especially with my eating disorders, a lot of this was provoked from that. I tend to panic when I get hungry because I'm afraid of a sugar crash or a dizzy spell or something. So I'm able to control that a little bit more, which is a big one for me. If I do go off the rail, as I mentioned, I'm not perfect. In fact, on Monday, went off rail that day because I ended up logging off, I think, at midnight that day from work. So of course the dinner plan got shot. But what you eat is not as important as how you do it and how much you do it, right? So I'm not kicking myself for going off plan, but I am, in fact, applauding myself, not to justify what we did, but that I can eat to a point where I'm comfortable and without overdoing it, without saying, oh my God, I might not have any time the rest of the day to go back for a meal. Therefore, I should eat as much as I can now. Like, it's so much easier to kind of deal through that, I guess. And that's a huge win of this program.
Definitely. So like everything you've talked about, like people could say like, well, I'm not going to start because it's not the right time. I'm too busy. I've got my kids at home. I'm working from home. But you also had another thing come up after joining that some people could just use that as the biggest excuse. So what's happened to you since you've joined, in addition to those other things that people can say, I can't do it because this, and this, you've also had something else come up.
Two things, actually. So I'll bring them both up. First is for the first time in my life, my back went out, which I've never experienced before.
Okay.
So welcome to age, I guess, So that was tough because that was definitely limiting from an activity standpoint. But then we also had a COVID scare in the house. We had somebody test positive who lives with us. And so the problem is, I am pretty sure I would have tested positive because when you trace the symptoms, I was definitely sick with what I thought was allergy symptoms. So I think that's a learning for a lot of people in this day and age. I've heard this story time and time again as I talk through it through other people. Luckily, that didn't knock me too far. As far I had a little bit of fatigue, but otherwise just symptoms where I would have in my past life, it's just a runny nose, I'll go to the gym anyway, sort of thing. But now we're cooped up at home. We're literally not allowed to leave. This is a serious disease. So trying to deal with, any sort of routine, be it, work routine or fitness routine in a small house, as I mentioned, it's been a challenge.
Yeah. So you've obviously had great success and you're doing really well. Aside from like the results and clothes fitting better, like what have you enjoyed most about the program overall?
I think I'm not someone who says I enjoy cooking, but I actually enjoy trying these recipes. I do love food exploration, which I guess could probably be one of the reasons that I'm here today as far as needing to deal with this, right? But I do love exploring through the food plant, and it's real food too. I mean, I will also not lie and say when I was younger, I did programs like Jenny Craig and, all these other ones where the food is processed and you buy it. And then, of course, when you're done with the program, these programs work, but they're not real. Right. And then, so when you're done with the program and you have to try to shift back to adjusting to your new body and your new habits, but with real stuff, with real food, with real routines, that's where a lot of people fail out of these programs and how they retain you. So I am definitely enjoying not just the exploring of the food and the realness of the program, but I'm loving fitting it because I do care about my new 2-year-old. I want her to not fall into the traps that I did. And she's enjoying the stuff with me. Watching her eat new foods and actually enjoy it. Like what parent would not say they want
Yeah,
that for their kids,
that's what it's
right?
about. That's the powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, for anybody who's watching this now or anybody who watches this video in the future, what advice would you give to somebody that is struggling with some of the same things that you've struggled with, or is just sort of on the fence about joining up with coaching or not?
Well, the first thing that I would probably say to this one is I know there's always the issue of costs of these programs, right? And I certainly had that. I was asking Corey about it, and people view this as an investment, which I think is the right way to look at it. But one thing I think people fall into the trap of, so here I am mentioning the trap, but this is also my financial head speaking. This is more than just dollars that you put in. You have to put in your commitment and your effort and, basically your time, your change management, your mindset. You have to be willing to devote everything into whatever program you choose. So that's where the investment really ramps up and the stakes are really high. But that's where you're also going to get your ROI, right?
Yeah.
So the return on this program is if you're willing to commit not just the money that goes into the coaching and with the tools that you're given, but if you really want results because you're ready to commit the non-monetary aspects of this, if you really want the change and you're going to do what it takes to make it happen, then this very much fits in that lifestyle, right? You're doing it naturally, you're doing it in ways, right? It's sustainable for a reason because you can continue to do this. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. It's, the cliche of the health world, but it's true, right? So, and that's what this program focuses on. It's not about just the food or just this. The focus is on the food because you need it to fuel and to maintain, but it's so much more than that. It's into, your habits and the psychology a little bit, if you will, and how you can fit it to your lifestyle. For me, a big falling grace was dinner. And, to have dinner ideas that you could throw together in 10 minutes, including cook time, right? Like 10 to 30 minutes, that's something I could do. I can't defrost food plus cook it plus feed it and then all that on top of a busy work schedule. That's not sustainable. But having the tools to go into it, this is the program to give you those tools. So I guess I would just push people to say you have to be willing to put in all of the effort and all of whatever you're going to invest into it. But if that, being real with yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But if you are being real with yourself and you're ready to do it, then this is a good program to keep it real with you.
Thank you, Juliana. Well, first of all, thank you for doing this interview and sharing your experience. Anybody who's watching this video or right now or watching this on replay and you want to learn more about the program that Juliana has been doing, please shoot me a message or comment below this video. If there's a place to comment, I'll be happy to get on a conversation with you to discuss what you're going through or just to have a conversation. And I appreciate you watching. Juliana, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. And I will see you tonight on our coaching call at 7 p.m.
I will see you there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.